Welcome to MGO Bucks. Ohio State is absolutely killing it in the transfer portal, and they are killing it in recruiting. You would almost think that Ohio State has beaten Michigan the last 3 years, gone to the playoffs the last 3 years, and they're about to play Washington in the national title tomorrow. By the way, they're recruiting. But in any case, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about apparently Ryan Day is going to hire an offensive coordinator, which is very interesting. Get to that too. And we'll also talk about after that our picks for the game, Michigan versus Washington, all that up next. But first of all, Matt, how is the Ohio State offseason going for you?
Well, it was really slow initially, and I was just like, it seemed like every day was bad news, bad news, bad news. Nothing good was ever happening. And then finally, some of the games finished, and then we're sort of getting more news coming out. And then it seems like we're getting a lot of good news now. So it's just like a combination of landing really high profile recruits from high school, and then also getting all the portal guys as well. Not all the portal guys, but enough. And it's hard. For me, I'm just excited to add more depth at a minimum. We're getting the Alabama center. He might play center for Ohio State. He might play guard. Hearing conflicting stories that he was maybe hurt his wrist or something that was contributing to his snaps in that game, but he's had bad snaps in other games too. Like in Auburn, that 4th and 31 was because of a bad snap. So he's had that, but I mean, in like 3 years, he's only given up 1 sack, so that's pretty amazing. And his PFF grades, his first 2 years were much higher than last year. Some people were suggesting that possibly that was because the whole line was relatively new this year. A lot of young players, especially left tackle was freshman. So when you're trying to overcompensate for bad players on both sides, potentially that could lead to him screwing up more. So his PFF grade wasn't the best this year, but it's still infinitely better than our current center, Carson Hintzman. So we don't know if Carson Hintzman's going to be coming back, or if he's going to be going to the portal, or if he does come back, maybe they'll slide him over to guard. So it could be we could be getting McLaughlin from Alabama to start center, and then Hintzman going to guard. And then we also got another offensive lineman. I think it was guard though, but
I thought you only got
was he the only one?
Guys in the transfer portal, but I could be wrong. We have Will Howard and the guy from Alabama, McLaughlin.
Yeah, and I know that there was 2 tackles that we were in on that we didn't get. I think A&M got one of them, and I can't remember who got the other one. But some of that seems to be the one that's really hard to get in the portal. The tackles, like guards, you can get a little bit easier in centers, but the tackles I think are really expensive. Then so we have Will Howard, and then. But we end up getting the top as far as high school recruits. We got the number 1 corner in the country in Sanchez, and then adding him is huge. He's like number 13 overall and number 1 corner, and I mean that's just going to help a lot. And I think our recruiting class is number 2 behind LSU, because LSU, we were number 1 for like 5 minutes, and then LSU landed the quarterback from Michigan, and that's why Michigan fans have been a little upset. But everyone's sort of going like, well, we don't care. We're not going to give him $5 million to come to Michigan like LSU did. And instead, we're happy with the guys that'll come here for free, like JJ McCarthy, and we're happy that they would just want to be Michigan men, and stuff like that. Right. So, it's interesting. I mean, this guy, LSU they have 3 5-stars for 2025. The number 1 quarterback, the number 1 running back, and the number 1 wide receiver. So offense, they are absolutely destroying.
You got to be dishing out the cash for that.
Yeah, so they're giving out huge money.
Well, and Ohio State sure does have a lot of time right now to go out and recruit. Some teams are still actually playing games right now, so that is definitely one of those benefits that you have. But hold on, that was an awesome.
You'll be able to excuse that excuse. You'll be able to use that excuse for one more day, and then.
Well, yeah, but I mean, before we get deep into that, anyway, so I wanted to start with Ryan Day. He's going to hire an offensive coordinator, because I kind of heard some rumblings about that. Not sure if I 100% believed it at the time, but now it sounds like it's a real thing. So he's going to give up play calling duties. I heard he's going to hire an offensive coordinator. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to give up play calling duties, right? Because even when you had a true legit offensive coordinator and the one guy that was the head coach at Indiana, I don't know why I'm
Yeah, Kevin, what's his name?
Yeah, but Ryan Day was still calling plays, right? But I've also
I
heard that the boosters are starting to give Ryan Day
yeah.
some grief, so maybe he will be actually at some point giving up his play calling
Yeah.
duties.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is the report that came out a day or so ago was, he was going to be hiring an offensive coordinator and giving him total control to hire and fire every offensive staff position under him, other than Brian Hartline, of course. So everyone is potentially on, if he wants to get rid of anyone on offense, that's fine. Like our running back coach has not really landed. I mean, the last 2 years, our top five, we've had like high end 5-star running backs who have like left like last minute to go to Miami or whatever. This year was Miami. I can't remember about last year, but we're 2 5-star running backs he wasn't able to close on, and then also Bijan Robinson. He also had him a couple years back, and he wasn't able to hold on to him either. I mean, granted, it's a little bit more difficult with NIL because he may be doing a great job, and then Miami might be just giving him $800,000 to come to Miami. So it's hard to say how much of that is that versus something else. But we have other things like our cornerback coach and our wide receiver coach and our like those guys are both able to bring in all these 5-star recruits, and supposedly, whether we're giving a little bit of money or no money at all and just only paying people with NIL deals once they're proven and on campus, whether they're okay with just coming here and getting developed and then hoping to be a first-round pick and getting their NIL money once they're proven. If that's enough, I mean, for whatever reason, it's working with, because our cornerbacks coach, we got, who's the guy, Sauce Gardner. He was the coach for Sauce Gardner over at Cincinnati. So he was, he's been killing it the last 2 years. Like all of our corner prospects are high 4 and 5-star players the last 2 years. So he's been just right up there with Heartline 1 and 2 on the top recruiters for OSU. So we need some of our other positions to be able to pick it up. It doesn't have to be that good, but like they need to pick it up a lot. Like so many other positions are just not getting anything.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like as far as the play calling though, do you really think that Ryan Day is going to actually give up the play calling duties? Because that was what kind of like first hit me when I saw, okay, new offensive coordinator. What does that mean exactly for the offense? Because that seems like, I mean, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, Jim Harbaugh called plays when he first came to Michigan. He was the play caller. Then he started giving that up. But he's still like he was like in a 3-way call basically with the two offensive coordinators, the co-offensive coordinators, and now you'll have Brian Hartline who may or may not actually be a part of that. I don't know. I haven't heard much about him coordinating any the offense at all or making any play calls, but he's such a good recruiter and he's obviously a good wide receivers coach. So it'll be interesting to see if like Ryan Day actually gives that up, or if he actually gives part of it away. Is he going to be on a 2-3-way call during games and just kind of giving his 2 cents?
Yeah. So I mean, he was originally going to promise that to Hartline, and then like after spring or at some point in fall practice, he just said that he wasn't going to make that change yet. And, which makes sense because, you wanted to give you had the way that a lot of these jobs work as far as pay rate for state schools, like you can only give like a raise or a bonus. I'm not sorry, a bonus, but like a raise. You can only give a certain amount of raise to a position based on the position title for the coach. So if he's only a receivers coach, he can't get more than a certain amount of money. But if you give him an extra title like associate head coach or offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator, you're given the flexibility to add more money there. So that's, help with that. So I think that, Hartline is probably okay with, he has his family's there. He's an alum. He's happy just wanting to do what he does at Ohio State. I don't know how much of, I haven't heard too much of him being concerned about, because he could have probably even get more money if he went somewhere else, but seems to be content just learning on the job here. But I think we definitely need to get an offensive coordinator who can at least help a little bit more with the game planning than Hartline, someone who actually has experience. Because if you notice,
Oh yeah.
so it wasn't just going from CJ Stroud to our Kyle this year. It was more than just the quarterback switch. It was also losing his offensive coordinator he's had for like 5 years. How long has he been there? Like the old co-offensive coordinator was with him for at least 5 years. I mean, it's been for a long time. I think he came on like right when he was since he started coaching. So I think last year was, I think 2023 was the first year he didn't have that extra help. So that probably hurt a lot as well. Like not having that. I mean, he's been a genius mind when he was at Oklahoma, and then also at Indiana. So losing that kind of talent at offensive coordinator, I think really hurt last year. And I think we need to go out and hopefully really get a legitimate offensive coordinator to add to the team, like we did with Jim Knowles. We just need to get that for our offense. Uh-oh. He froze up. But in addition to that, like I'll be interested to see like what kind of coordinator they're willing to, if they're willing to go all out, spend a couple $1 million and get an elite offensive coordinator, just like we did on defense. And I think they are, because I think Day knows if he doesn't get, if this year he's not able to beat Michigan, I think he's very likely out unless he's able to go into the playoffs and make a deep run. So he has a lot riding on the 2024 season. So we really need to get him. He needs to go all out, get that extra coordinator, become if he has to be the the CEO instead of just the offensive coordinator and head coach, and just sort of doing everything by himself like he's doing now. If he can step back and work more on game management, because game management has been one of his biggest problems up until this point. And I think, welcome back.
Yeah.
I was saying that, Ryan Day, it's like he needs to be able to be a CEO and focus more on game management, and let some other people help him in some of the other areas. And I think it's been about, somewhere I read that it's been like 10 years since someone has won a national championship while also the head coach, while also being the offensive coordinator and calling the plays. So that hasn't happened in a decade. So read the tea leaves. You got to make the change.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, and we'll see if it actually happens. It'll be fascinating to actually watch that whole process happen, because Ryan Day doesn't actually want to do that, right? I mean, to me anyway, you can tell that's what he wants to do. He wants to have control over that, over calling those plays, coordinating the offense. He doesn't want anything to do with the defense, but he really needs to kind of be like that overall leader that takes care of like the CEO of the team rather than actually calling those plays. But yeah, and like going on from that, I think as far as like the NIL, as far as the transfer portal, and speaking a little bit about Michigan in that regard, it's, I mean, I would love to be able to say that, oh gosh, it's Harbaugh's fault. I mean, that plays a little bit into it. It's Harbaugh's fault because, they can't get guys to commit because they're all wondering if they're actually going to be, is he going to the NFL? He's flirting with the NFL so much. Is that having an impact on these recruits making decisions? I'd love to say, oh, well, it's, pick your excuse. It's really their own issue. Like I'd like to blame NIL, say, oh gosh, we're not paying these players, or it's the weather in Michigan. It's just too cold in Michigan to get these recruits to come up north. But Ohio State's only 3.5 hours away. It's not like it's warm in Columbus right now. So Ohio State's killing it. Michigan isn't. We just saw in the last 3 years, a 5-star quarterback from Michigan, was in the last 3 years, 2022, 2023, 2024. I might actually have that backwards. It's actually 2025, 2024, 2023. Yeah. And we've lost all of those quarterbacks. Dante Moore goes out west. to play for UCLA. Now he's at Oregon. I mean, he turned us down twice. Like, he turned us down 2 times. Then we missed out on the Carr kid, Lloyd Carr's grandson. We couldn't get him out of the state of Michigan to commit
That's just
here.
brutal. Where did he go?
He went to Notre Dame. That makes me feel
my gosh.
disgusting and dirty. Like, you lose a recruit like that.
Real quick though, speaking of good,
and then of course before we get into the third guy, who is Bryce. What's his last name? Shoot, escaping me right now. But anyway, he just committed to LSU yesterday. So it was the trifecta of failure. Basically. And we have just gotten done beating Ohio State the last 3 years and going to the playoffs, and we're playing for a national title. We haven't gotten any of those guys. So what I'd really like to blame, have all these excuses, but really it's just Michigan not recruiting the guys that they want. For some reason, they're not able to get them, whereas Ohio State is, and they don't have that much of a recruiting advantage for any other reason. So I don't know. It's just very, very interesting, very sad to me, because
do you remember when the portal first opened up and all these quarterbacks were coming in and everyone's like, wow, there's so many of these elite quarterbacks. So Oregon went and grabbed Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma, and then they also got Dante Moore, which is just complete ridiculousness. So like they're getting 2, like, when the portal opened, I'm assuming you're the same way. Like, we would have been happy if we'd have just got one of those guys. They get them both. Dylan Gabriel immediately becomes one of the Heisman favorites for next year. It just seems, like, I mean, Oregon is definitely one of the schools that's paying people up front.
Oh yeah,
along with Ole Miss and Miami and Texas A&M.
And you know what? I don't blame any of those kids for taking the money, because that, like, you got to think, like, they've got in their minds anyway. They're thinking, okay, this gravy train can't last. We got to take our money now, because eventually maybe the NCAA, I don't know if that'll happen, but eventually the NCAA is going to figure all this out, create some rules around this, and the gravy train is going to stop. So the kids are like, hey, we better get it now. And I don't blame them one bit for doing that, because they know at this point, the transfer portal is so crazy. They know they can go get paid for a year, and then if things aren't working out, they can get out. They can just jump into the portal and get paid again. So I don't blame anyone for actually doing it. Heck, I would probably be working it too if I was a talented college football player. So I don't blame any of the kids for doing that. But anyway, Antoine is had some comments on here, and I know, Antoine, you've had a lot of opinions about just the recruiting process. Like, you're getting kids that are good for the Michigan fit, the Michigan football program, not necessarily the 5 stars. There's a lot of, I think that's a really good point, because Ohio State gets these kids, but look at 2021. Like, there were 5 stars on there, and I think they were all in like the top 15 basically, and none of those guys have beaten Michigan. So it doesn't always translate that way. And Michigan is on top right now. I mean, who cares about recruiting if you're playing in the national championship, right? That's the main reason you think about.
Well, the other thing that you're not mentioning is you got to get your 5 stars in the right positions too. So it's not just like, you can't just have all 5-star receivers. You need to have some offensive linemen 5 stars. Yeah,
that's very true. And Ohio State is
we have had some elite. I will say though that we did have a pretty elite offensive line last year. Like, we have Paris Johnson Jr., who is the best offensive lineman probably since like Nick Mangold in 2002. So, and then we also had DeJuan Jones, who, even though he didn't get drafted as high, he's an elite starter in the NFL before he got hurt. I think he's amazing. And, like, the whole line, though, I mean, everyone was like, I think they were all drafted. So, I mean, it was an elite line last year. But it just seems like we can't get the offense and defense to be elite at the same year. Like we have, while the defense was better last year, it was still very average overall, like, especially against good teams. And, while this year, and that's the other thing this year, like, the defense I felt was fairly elite for most of the year until Lathan Ransom got hurt. And, losing him for, then we had to pretty much play Sonny Styles at safety full-time instead of part-time. And Sonny Styles is, he's built to be a linebacker, and hopefully they'll move him to linebacker full-time next year, because
you think?
He's not. He's too big. He's like 6'4", 230 or something ridiculous.
He carries it
He's
good.
way
I
he,
mean, he made a lot
yeah.
of plays.
He's not.
I mean, not enough.
He doesn't make plays in the secondary that you need a safety to make.
Okay. No, maybe you can. I mean, maybe you can. I mean, I don't see why not. There's going to be a couple freshman corners that come in next year that you guys are getting. That Michigan wanted both of them, and Ohio State got them. And I know they're from Ohio, but I mean, it's really just comes down from Michigan anyway. It's just the lack of recruiting fundamentals. Like they're just not getting the guys they want, and to some degree they are only wanting. They're focusing on the people that are going to fit their program. I get that. But if they've got an offer and Michigan wants them and they're not getting them, which is happening a lot, then that's an issue. I mean, with where Michigan is right now in their program, they should be getting a lot more of these kids to commit, and they're not. So there's something wrong. I don't know what it is. It's something, and Jim Harbaugh's got to fix it, assuming he's actually going to be the football coach.
Yeah,
But
I mean, you have elite coordinators and an elite head coach, right? So
yeah,
it's strange that
yeah,
you haven't been able to get the higher ranked players.
yeah, awesome coaching. We're winning. Like what is
I mean,
going
I
on?
guess also the other side of the story could be that Michigan is just better at either they're better at finding all these diamonds in the
Point,
rough that
Antoine.
are like 3 and 4 star players, and they're just the recruiting rankings are just all wrong, or they're also just better at developing them, or a combination of those two things.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good point because I think you were kind of alluding or talking about earlier. There's a lot of these quarterbacks that are in like 5-star quarterbacks that are ending up at Malachi Nelson. Where is he going? Boise State. Then there's another kid, 5-star, that's going to Tulane.
Yeah.
And like maybe these kids just aren't very, maybe they're just busts. They're not as good as their ratings, because otherwise there would be some
I
big
mean, like
programs coming after them.
everyone thought Bryce Young would be the number one quarterback, and he clearly is not doing very well in the NFL. So it's it's not an exact science. It's unfortunate. Like the 2021 class for Ohio State, we had all these guys like Jonathan Cooper and JTT, and we had a linebacker too that hasn't even touched the field, who was a 5-star. Everyone's hoping that he'll play next year, but yeah, we have like all these highly recruited linebackers that have done nothing. And at least Cooper and JTT have they have solid PFF ratings, good pressure, but they just haven't come close to living up to top 10 billing that they were when they came into college.
Yeah. I like Quo Vadis. Where will Michigan be without their 6-year players?
44 super
Connor,
seniors.
Come on, we can put the Connor to bed, right? Connor's to bed now that Michigan's beating Alabama.
You guys did all that scouting you did before the season and during the season. So you had a bunch of Ohio State signs and other people's signs, and who knows what the only thing that you don't have is Connor in the game doing it. So they might just have someone up in the press box doing that now that's just a different person that you don't know about.
But let me remind you again that there's nothing wrong with sign stealing. Everyone does that.
Well, no, it's just the advanced sign stealing.
He was doing too good of a job of it because he's going to games and pre-scouting, which that's the only part he was in trouble for.
And I wanted to know,
he was awesome.
We also haven't heard anything about. So Blake Corum and Connor Stallions had that LLC, and it got dissolved recently because Corum is acting like he wasn't unaware of any of this happening.
Lies,
right? Because it would be illegal not illegal against university bylaws or NCAA bylaws for him to be having a business with one of the players. And so if that's the case, depending on what state that's in, it's potentially a felony to forge someone's name on a LLC. So Connor should have been going to jail for that if that's the case. But it's different depending on what state. And I don't know the details on that, and I haven't heard any updates on how obviously he did that allegedly without his knowledge. So he should be getting in trouble for that.
Lies and conspiracy theories. That's all that is. But yeah. And good point with Antoine here is this: our toughest part of the schedule was without Connor, which is exactly.
But you already had the advanced scouting was already done prior to that game.
and
You had
teams
you had
can
multiple
completely
games.
change that. I mean, you don't really think
Yeah.
that Michigan had any like advantage because of what Connor Stallions was doing against Bama, right? I mean, we're not making that case.
Well, he could have at the beginning. The last 2 years, there was information that he had scouted all these other teams, and that they said that I think TCU was the one team that they didn't scout last year. So they did
Mm,
scout some of the other top 10 teams. So yeah, so he's not just scouting Big Ten teams. I don't know if there was any Alabama scouting.
yeah. And Carter Smith, yeah, Michigan did get a 2025 quarterback. Pretty much knew that. And yeah, thank you, Antoine. Bryce Underwood. Underwood is his last name. Um, Carter Smith, he's not like super highly ranked. He's like the top 150 guy, I think. But yeah, he might be a good quarterback. He might be the reincarnation of JJ, maybe. But yeah, it's very interesting. But no more Connor Stallions.
Okay.
That's done for me, except for with the potential punishments that might be coming from that. But yeah, very very interesting.
Let's talk
So
about it. It's funny. Like all these people on Michigan Twitter, everyone has been so focused on either recruiting or talking smack about Ohio State. It's like I've seen so little discussion about like this game. I don't know if everyone just thinks it's an automatic that they're going to beat Washington. That they're favored, and like no one's talking about Washington. I haven't heard anyone think that Washington is going to win this game. It seems to me Michigan might be a little overconfident, and they're hearing all their praises. They beat Alabama, and like this is basically just a formality. What do you think?
I'll tell you one thing. It sounds like the media is definitely overconfident for Michigan. I'm going to pick them. I mean, that's probably like no secret or no big surprise. I'm going to pick them. But you and I talked before the playoffs, and you said, who would you rather play? And I said, I would rather play Texas. I don't want to play Washington. And I know you said you should probably want to play Washington because of the matchups. So that might
Yeah,
still be true. But it's like Washington transcends the conventional wisdom of football. Like you basically look at Michigan and you say, "Oh, Michigan's going to have an advantage on the offensive line, the front seven of the defense, the offensive line. They're going to have a decided advantage." Washington's, I think, defensive rank is like in the 90s overall or something like that. It's something awful. It's atrocious, but they keep beating teams that are supposed to be better than them, and
yeah,
so like they really are transcending the conventional wisdom. It's because, I mean, you keep doubting them. They were underdogs, I think, both times to Oregon, if I'm not
yes,
mistaken. Definitely the second time. Underdogs to Texas. They beat Texas. It's like they're just taking that, putting a chip on their shoulder. Them being in Washington, they're like hold my soy latte, and then Penix just basically arm punts a ball up, and one of those three receivers are going to catch it. And so, yeah, sure, that's awesome that you have a better line. You have a better team, maybe overall. But if you can just arm punt that ball up there, and those receivers come down with it, old Joe Burrow, like, man, I don't know how you. It's very possible they could just beat Michigan by taking them completely out of their game plan, just like TCU did. So I don't think Michigan's going to come into this overconfident because of the way they played against TCU last year, but they could very well be mentally just completely destabilized from playing Bama. That's one thing I hope they're taking it easy this week. Really, I really hope they're taking it easy this week and working on their mental health after taking care of Alabama, because that was a huge game.
yeah. I thought Texas clearly would have been the harder matchup because your biggest strength is the run game. Texas has some of the best defensive tackles in the country and a great defensive line, so that would have been just a heck of a matchup to watch. And I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get to see it. But at the same time, Penix is one of the best quarterbacks I've seen in college
Mhm.
football this year. He is just every time I watch him, it's just each game is better than the last. The guy is just incredible. He
Yeah,
just,
he is.
I mean, his offensive line has been magnificent. His running game is really good. He has got that's the one question I'm a little bit worried about. Their running back, the coach said he's ready to go for the game. He has some pain in his foot. I don't know if it's going to limit him at all. And I'm sure he would say the same thing even if he wasn't playing. He would probably still say that. But I'm sure even the backup running backs will probably be okay just because the line is so good. But I'm so impressed with how well they're able to run the ball either up the middle normally or to the side because they're all the receivers. Not only are those receivers great, but they can all block, all of them. Like their wide runs have been just as good as their runs up the middle because their receiver blocking is so good. So um, I don't, I'd be really impressed if Michigan is actually able to contain that run game too. Everyone is worried about the passing game, but if their running back is healthy, I think the running game is really going to help open things up too. And I think really the only thing that I would think as a Michigan fan that I would be worried about in this game is if Washington can get up early. That's really got to be the only concern because you would think that, if Michigan can get up early, they would be able to do the, grind them down, ball possession, wear them out, and then, have that smothering defense. But if Michigan, gets down early, a couple scores really quick, and that's pretty easy to do. Like, no matter how good your corners are, you have some really legit receivers on Washington, and Penix is just throwing crazy balls. People in his face. He gets a pass off in 1.5 seconds, and just throws a dime with coverage guys draped on his receivers. It doesn't matter. Like everything he does is just amazing. So if they get up 14-0 early on, maybe Michigan starts pressing a little bit. Whereas JJ is normally really poised and he's great rolling out and making plays on the run, but he did almost throw that costly interception against Alabama on the first drive of the game. I mean, maybe he gets down early and he throws an early pick like that.
Yeah, I mean, something like that. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But
Or special teams
one thing
blunders.
about the running back, though, the running back for Washington did terrible against Texas. You saw his numbers. He only had 2.3 yards per carry and something atrocious. I know
Texas,
it was 2.3 yards per carry against Texas. And so
no one runs against Texas, though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. And they'll have to stop him too, for sure. But I wanted to put this comment back up. Antoine mentioned this while you were talking. Washington is terrible at stopping the run. Texas should have beat them, but they're stupid like Ryan Day and kept throwing the ball, which is pretty funny because Joel Klatt was on like maybe earlier this week. I think it was earlier this week saying like Michigan kind of has the blueprint to stop Washington because it sure looked like Washington's offense was a lot like Ohio State's offense, where you have three awesome receivers 2 years in a row, and you've got an elite passer like CJ Stroud. And they basically just played the type of defense where you kind of let them move down the field and hope they make a mistake after a little while. You don't give them the really big, long, deep passes. So I don't know. It'll be.
You're forgetting.
Ohio State has a better offensive line than Washington, even though Washington's is good. But Michigan was still able to just rush 4 and kind of cover in the back end and make them earn every single yard down the field. And, if then kick a lot of field goals, then you try and stop them in the red zone. I'll be upset if Michigan has to rely on that strategy completely, because I don't think Washington is as talented as Ohio State was on offense in 2021, 2022. But that is kind of
in the red zone. I think in the red zone, they're much better, which is our big problem against you guys. So because they have like a better power running game. And so like we've had good running games, but we haven't really had a good power running game since like 2019 with J.K. Dobbins. So like at 2020. So those 2 years, we haven't had a good power running game. So we, with Trey Henderson, we just get like those big runs or nothing. We don't have like a power running game. And when you get in the red zone, you need to be able to get a power running game so you can get those 4 yards inside the red zone and get touchdowns instead of field goals. Washington has an elite offensive line, an elite running game for that purpose against all teams except for Texas. And I mean, Texas is the only team this year that just really has completely destroyed everyone's running game. And, I know Michigan has a good run defense too, but they're not like Texas run defense.
Yeah. And so what do you think Michigan's best defense should be as far as what they're going to play against Washington? Should they go after them the way they did Alabama? Because they were blitzing Alabama. I mean, they were going after them. And that that can actually get real dangerous against a guy like Penix or CJ Stroud because
Yeah.
they're all really, really good against the blitz.
Yeah, I have not
But you
seen
got to get
Penix
home quick.
get affected by any blitzes this year. So, I mean, I think your only real hope is hoping for stops in the red zone. But you know, I think that like the big difference though against between Ohio State and Washington, I think it's just the red zone. And I think that Washington does it much better with the power running game. I think not. They just always convert their touchdowns. So I think that's to be the one big difference. So it's probably just going to be a crazy shootout, and it just goes to show how much better their offense is because it's going to be a shootout, and Washington has no defense, and you guys have an elite defense, but yet I still think it's going to be a shootout just because that's how unbelievable their passing game is.
Yeah, I mean, again, Penix
Yeah,
is so good.
They got the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line this year. Their offensive line is ridiculous.
Did they win that? I was actually
yeah.
just wondering who won that award. It was
Yeah,
Washington.
they get no pressure. Texas was the only game this year I saw that even got any pressure.
Yeah, and Washington red zone defense is horrible. I'm guessing that's what Otis is talking about. It can't be the offense, but yeah, you got to hope that Michigan
Well,
changes
all of their
running it.
their defense is bad, but they do have some playmakers on defense. So I think that Washington is just going to have to hope that they make some big plays, like big sacks to force punts or interceptions or fumbles or something like that. Because just regular stopping, Michigan stopping them is not gonna work. And Corum doesn't fumble, so basically your only hope is a sack or interception. I mean that's or special teams mistakes again, which we had a few of those last time.
Yeah. All right. Let's Matt. Let's go with the picks. So, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow? And give your explanation, maybe, and then give us your pick. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, for a while there, I've been going back and forth. This is one of the hardest games I've had to pick in a while because it seems like by looking at the stats, Michigan should win the game, just because they're the more balanced team. But sometimes balance doesn't always win. When you have an offense, it's not like the Ohio State offense of old. Even our offenses in 2021 and 2022 just weren't as well rounded as this offense. And Penix, CJ Stroud may be better in the NFL, but Penix is the pinnacle in college, man. That he is just ridiculous. I just don't know if this Washington offense can be stopped. It's just a matter of whether I like the Washington offense being amazing or just as bad as that Washington defense is. So it's so hard. I just don't see Michigan screwing up too often either because God, that defense is ugly. But I still think it's going to be a shootout. I don't know. I haven't looked at the stats to see like the over under on this one, but I'm going to guess probably the over on it, whatever it is, because I think it's going to be something like 48-42 or something. Like I think it's going to be a ridiculous. It's going to be such a crazy game. I'm guessing crazy amounts of points. I think Washington's going to win. I think at the end it's going to be similar to the Texas game where Washington probably is going to get a nice lead. They're going to try to hold on to the lead, and that's the one thing that Washington is not good at. Washington is great at getting a big lead. They're not good at keeping it, and I think
they keep getting the lead.
Michigan is going to come back, but I don't think they're going to be able to. I think Washington will get one stop finally at the end, like they did against Texas, and it's going to be very similar to that game.
Interesting. So, what was your score again? 40-something to 40-something?
48-42. Crazy
48-42.
Offensive explosion.
Going into the offensive explosion. You know what? If it gets into that, where defenses are just giving it up, I think Washington might actually win the game if it gets to that point. I'm going to go with Michigan treating Washington's offense the same as Ohio State's. I agree with Joel Klatt kind of on that. I think CJ Stroud, he even mentioned this. CJ Stroud threw for almost 400 yards in 2021 and 2022 with a couple of touchdown passes, but they still lost the game pretty handily. So Penix is going to have a day. either way because he just always does. And those receivers having all three are just ridiculous. Michigan, I think, will be able to have a little more offense. I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball like they did against Ohio State in 21, but I think Michigan will definitely control the game with the lines. It really does come down to blocking and tackling at the end, and I think Michigan is still going to end up winning the game. I just really think that it's hard for me too. I don't think it's going to be a close game either way. I don't think anyone's going to win by 2 touchdowns. I'm thinking the score is going to be more like 34-31 Michigan. That's my pick.
Yeah, I mean, it very well could be that. That's the one thing that it's hard for me to pick a high scoring game just because you know that Michigan wants to grind that clock out. But my theory was Washington's going to get the early lead, forcing Michigan to try to have to do catch up. And in the catch up, they're going to have to throw. But guess what? JJ can throw too. He just hasn't had to. He can do it. He'll be. JJ's probably going to get close to 400 yards in this game, just because I think they're going to be
He's
having
never
to catch up
close to 400. He's gotten a little
he
over.
Will against Washington.
Like
he will against this defense because you would like to be rushing Quorum all the time, but if you're playing catch up, I think that they're going to have to throw, and they're more than capable of throwing against a bad defense.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. I'm going to be on pins and needles all day tomorrow. But either way, I'm not going to be one of those guys that how many games has Michigan won now? Is it 14 games or 15 games? I'm going to be happy with this season either way. It would be poetic.
Don't try to sugarcoat it. It's going to be ugly if you lose. And I'm going to remind you. All for nothing, man. All for nothing.
It's going to be ugly. I'm going to be in the bathtub covered in whiskey. But it would be poetic justice though for Washington, the Pac-12, to actually win the national title
on their last,
literally on their last day of existence.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen. A lot of people are pulling against Michigan. Probably the entire country wants Michigan to lose because of Connor Stallions and the supposed cheating. So it's going to be a fascinating game. I hope Michigan wins. I think they will. I think that their defense is going to be too much. I think they'll eventually Penix enough to keep them stabilized.
This is the first legit passing team you guys have played this year. So this is the last time you guys have played a legit passing offense was Ohio State 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, last year was a legit passing team against CJ Stroud, and
they got in the red zone. They made the plays.
Yeah, and you know what? We tried blitzing a deep safety one time against CJ Stroud,
and Marvin got a touchdown.
And Marvin Harrison caught a 40-something plus touchdown. They never did it again. And so I don't think that they're going to try that against Penix. I don't think there's going to be any blitzing. They're going to rush 4 guys, hope to get as much pressure as much as possible and control them between the 20s, and then play a really long offensive game. Like the offensive drives are going to be so long. This might be a 2.5-hour game because Michigan is just taking really long drives. That if that happens, Michigan wins. But Penix is just always there. It's always possible for him. I think you guys have a great front seven. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll arm punt this ball and hey, touchdown. So that could just blow up all the things about football.
This is the first team you guys have played with 3 legitimate receivers, let alone 2. I don't think you've played even anyone with 2. Emeka and Marvin, but I think Emeka hasn't been 100% almost all year. So and then still he didn't have a good quarterback throwing to him. So this will be the first combination of elite quarterback and an elite receivers, 3 elite receivers. So it's just unbelievable offense. I can't wait to see what Michigan's defense does against them. Now Michigan should win. I'm just throwing out. It's more hopeful than what I actually think. I'm picking Washington because I want them to win. If I had to bet money on it, I would probably pick Michigan just because I think that their defense is ridiculously good, and Washington has not faced any good. The only good pass defenses they faced this year is Oregon, and that was 55th or 60th in the country. So that's the best defense they've faced. So it's a huge jump up. But again, Michigan's defense is a little inflated because they haven't faced any good offenses either. So it goes both
Very
ways.
true. Very true. Yeah. Well, my gosh, I think we'll end the video on that, because I think we're pretty much we've guessed what's going to happen, right? It's funny that we're
Yep.
both like I'm glad that you picked Washington. I'm glad you picked Washington, because now we have something to like banter about during the game. But anyway, Matt, thanks so much. Everyone in the chat, thanks so much for contributing and made it awesome. A lot of fun. Matt, go blue.
Go Bucks.
Have a
Down
good
goes
one.
Michigan. Down goes Michigan.
No, thank you. Take care, everyone.